Okay, well, I'm back again. And I know you're going to say, Jordan, you said you were back last time, and then you didn't upload a video, and then you also didn't do a lot of things. And that is somewhat true. That is kind of true, yeah, that is true. But I did get absolutely shafted by YouTube, who wouldn't let me upload my videos. So I had recorded some stuff, but I couldn't upload it for some weird reason. It would just stay on 1% for like an hour and then just time out. So sorry about that. And I had a camping trip the other week or whatever, so that kind of took up my time, so I wasn't really able to do anything about it. Probably should have pre-planned it, but didn't really work out that way. But what are we going to talk about today? Something I am finding very interesting and is also scaring the fuck out of me, but in kind of like a good way, in like a kind of like way that gives you like a mini epiphany, which is, you know, kind of what this whole channel is about, giving you little mini epiphanies about life and about the world and your place in it and stuff like that. But the book in question that I've been reading, that I'm finding very interesting and scary, and all of the above, is The Age of Surveillance Capitalism by Shoshana Zuboff. Well, I think, yeah, I don't know who exactly that is. I haven't looked them up. Are they? Yeah, they are a female. I just wanted to refer to her correctly. But it is an incredible book, and you're probably wondering, capitalism. I know what that is, but what's surveillance capitalism? Interesting. I didn't know what it is either, but then you've been a part of it for a very long time now without you knowing. And oddly enough, that's actually part of the game of surveillance capitalism, is that you're not meant to know about it. You, me, the people that you walk by on the street, the people that ride the bus opposite you, you know, all of them are participating in surveillance capitalism quite unwittingly without even knowing it. Now, what it is about is essentially, it is the rendition, if I had to put it in like a sentence, it is essentially about rendering every experience that you have in your life, both in what you do, like as into where you go, what you do, what you say, also to the level of like your emotions. Are you angry? Are you sad? X, Y, Z, you know, like whatever. Like, it's about essentially rendering your entire human experience into data, which can then be used as a prediction tool or prediction analytics for advertising or for encouraging certain behavior. That is what surveillance capitalism is about. And it is the reason why, you know, and I'm going to struggle with how to cover this topic just because it's so broad, and I don't want to do multiple parts because I feel like it's just going to get too much too quickly. I do definitely recommend, you know, buying the book and reading it like I have myself, because boy is it a fucking whirlwind. But essentially it's about, you know, just to give some examples of what surveillance capitalism, how it works and what it does, is essentially the devices that we use, you know, from your phone to, if you're one of those people that has one of those wearables, something like that, those are all surveillance capitalism, you know, essentially data trawlers or data, you know, gatherers or whatever you want to call them, or mining equipment. Let's use that because you're digging for gold. Now, the conception and kind of trade-off that has been proposed to us in society from a bunch of, you know, these technology companies like Google, Facebook, you know, social media companies, and pretty much, you know, now it's getting to the point of anyone and everyone is doing this. But the deal is, okay, you get a free service, like you get to use Google, or you get to use Facebook or social media or whatever. You can use our service, but we get to take all the information about you that, you know, is generated from you. We get to use that for our own purposes. Now, it's always construed as, oh, no, but we take that information to improve services and deliver, you know, improvements and to functionalities and stuff like that. That is true to a degree. What the real game is getting that information and then either selling it to someone, or using it for prediction analytics so that you can then go to advertisers and be like, hey, I know the perfect time, and this is the level it gets to, and you might think I'm going crazy about this, but essentially what they've, like, companies like Google and, you know, stuff have done is the first, and it does kind of start with Google because, well, maybe that is probably the best place to start, is with Google. So originally back in the day, like during the 2000s, like the very early 2000s, there was a tech bubble called the dot-com crash. Essentially, all these companies were, you know, at the time, you know, as a perfect example to, you know, relate to our current days, there's been all this talk in the past couple of years about NFTs and, you know, and cryptocurrency and stuff like that. And it was always billed as the next big thing, you know, you know, like every single company out there is talking about how they're integrating blockchain and, you know, Web 3.0, you know, functionalities and things into their offering, into their product offerings, without even really knowing what the technology does or whether or not it's even relevant for what service or what good they provide. It's just like, why, like, you know, it's just a fad, you know, it's this big fad. And back in the early 2000s and like late 90s, early 2000s, it was .com. So essentially website-based companies and web companies were just being founded left, right, and center. And there was all this money, there was all this venture capital chasing this brand new fad, you know. So all this money got given to these .com companies, but the problem they suffered was they didn't actually have a way of making money. That was the problem. There was no profitability in them. They were essentially just doing anything and anything, you know, whether it just be a random website with funny gags or whatever. I know that's probably not the best example or the best kind of thing, but look it up. Just look it up. Do your own research for once, for fuck's sake. Instead of having me just troll, having to do all the work myself. God damn it. Nah, I love it. Who am I kidding? But a lot of companies failed, and Google was facing that same sort of problem. It's just like, shit, how do we actually get profitability? Well, what they found out was they had this thing that they, at the time, was called data exhaust. Data exhaust. There was all this data exhaust being made. Now, what is that? Data exhaust to them at that point was, hey, you know, we were noticing it's taking X amount of time for people to click on this link, or we noticed that, hey, people click on the first link more often, you know, than anything else. And pretty much what data exhaust is the metadata, or, you know, information about how you interact with their site, Google. So how long does it take you to, you know, like how many pages do you go in, like on average, before you finally click on a link? It was all this information that they were kind of gathering in the background, which was clogging up their servers, which they kind of were like, what's that all about? And then they realized, oh wait, we can actually probably use that as a way to improve, like originally to improve our service, and in turn also what ended up becoming essentially Google AdWords, which is their ability to advertise, like put advertisements and sponsored links right within the search results and at key prominent locations. And they could, by doing that, sell that service to companies, and so companies would pay to have, you know, their links higher up in the Google algorithm. And that was their first kind of attempt at that. Now, what's an interesting thing about this is they did all of this without really thinking. They were thinking, but they didn't. It was an untainted greenfield sort of experiment or area of expertise, because no one had really kind of done that before, or really knew about it. So they didn't ask the question, and this is the question, you know, regulators, you know, privacy regulators and governments need to ask themselves now. It's like, by interacting on the internet and you know, and with internet-enabled devices, who owns the data generated from you participating or interacting with those services or those digital, you know, mediums? Who actually owns that? And that's the key question that the book tried to ask. Like, who gets to know? Who gets to decide what's done with that information? And then who decides what's done with that information? I know that probably was a little bit hard to understand or make sense of, but just play it back and you'll get the message. And that was their first kind of foray, and it was a huge success. They saw a huge amount of money was coming in from, you know, advertisers and companies, and they were like, damn, we've got something with this. Now, fast forward a little bit further, a CIA-backed company, I can't remember, I think it was called Worldview, or, oh god, what was the name of it? It was some dystopian sounding name, but pretty much it was the precursor to Google Earth and Google Maps. It was a CIA funded satellite company, or mapping company, and they were then eventually bought out by Google. And what Google had done, this is I'm jumping a few steps. Sorry. Another aspect of what they did, they'd index the web, right? They'd index the web and search results and people's activity on the web. Then what they did was they looked through, with offerings like Gmail. They then go through your Gmail and look at all the information. Yeah, I know, it's pretty crazy. They actually, any bit of text, any email that you sent through Gmail is actually also being scanned by their algorithms and shit like that to then figure out what kind of person you are, to then profile you, and then so to feed you ads and, personalized ads and stuff like that. Yay! And then they also time it to be at certain, they also know to time it based off that as well. And that's what this is all about. It's creating a profile about you to such a degree that they know so much more about you than you even know yourself, and then finding the moments where they can put an opportunity or an action in front of you, whether or not it's a sale or, hey, have you tried this XYZ restaurant? Cool, whatever. It's all about getting that into your face at the right time. But to do that, they need to know everything about you. Your routines, your interests, your preferences, your moods, things like that. They need to know everything. So it started with the web, like web searches and stuff like that. It then moved to Gmail and email-based scanning and figuring that out. And you can get a lot of information just from your web results, let alone looking at someone's emails. Jesus Christ. Then it came to Google Maps. And so Google bought that CIA funded company, or originally backed company, and from there what they did is they pretty much went around and mapped the planet, mapped the streets, mapped everything. They indexed the world as we know it, and they're constantly redoing that, but we'll get to that in a sec. And it kind of moves further and further into more and more aspects of your life. So a recent recent as in a couple, it's been a couple of years now, is the Google Home Assistant and, and the Amazon Alexas, or whatever they're called, and the Microsoft, Cortanas, these digital assistants. They're the next layer. That's another layer. Next layer. It's just one of the many layers, and pretty much they record everything you're saying, and it gets even scarier because that kind of recording stuff isn't just for the digital assistants, it even goes to things like your smart TV. So anything with the word smart in it, you need to be very fucking careful about that, and read the privacy policy. Yeah, I know, read the privacy policy. You are going to be absolutely shocked when you actually start reading some of these things, because holy shit, the line you've got to look for, the line you've got to look for in privacy policies, this is the one you always will find, and it's going to be there every fucking time. Guarantee it. Doesn't matter, and this is the crazy thing, doesn't matter what company. It could be a health company. Like, let's say you've got a fitness app on your phone, right? Yeah, tracks your jogging. Read the privacy policy of your fitness app. Guarantee you there will be a clause in there that says all data that is generated, we can provide to third parties. We can share with third parties. It will be their data sharing policy within the privacy policy. You'll see this here. It'll be something along the lines of, we are allowed to share information with third parties, and we are not liable for anything that happens because of us sharing the information with third parties, so on and so forth. Pretty much absolving them of all responsibility, but taking all the gain, because they can take all your information and then use that to then just sell to advertise. Either sell that to data brokers, because those exist, by the way. There are whole companies in the shadows. In the shadows, meaning you don't know their name. Whereas you are aware of the brand, like Google or Facebook or, Louis Vuitton. You don't know these names. And to be honest, even I've got to do more research into these companies and these names. But there's major data brokers who essentially who suck up all of this information from these companies. It could be your fitness app. It could be the wearable you're wearing, your little, Apple smartwatch. Those things are tracking you. And, it's all about just adding at every layer possible. Any avenue which they can get information, they will try it. They will try their hardest and darndest to make sure they get in there and get all those data streams as possible, because the kind of lie that we've been sold is that like the service is free, or the service is, you know, not as expensive as it would be because, you know, you're the product. That's what it's said. Like that's how they've posited as you're the product. That's not true. You're not the product. You really don't matter, actually. It's the information about you that matters. You as an individual, your name, Jordan Hetty, well for me, Jordan Hetty, or whoever the fuck you are, you know, that doesn't actually matter. Who you are as a person isn't important to them. But what the information they can gain about you is what's important to them. And so in reality, you're not a product. You're a mine. You're a mine to be like, you know, because when you look at let's say a gold mine, right? The gold is the product, not the mine itself. The mine is just where the product is buried in the ground, you know, and there's all this information that you generate just by doing anything online or just living your life. They want to know it all. And it's utterly terrifying that this has gone unabated for the most part. There's been, you know, a bit of pushback, but they have a whole strategy. And just like back in the day, how the tobacco companies came up with the deny, doubt, then delay strategy, which was we deny that, you know, cigarettes cause cancer. Then we, you know, when more and more evidence builds up that it does, well, then we cast doubt on that evidence. And then when it's unequivocally, you know, decided that tobacco was bad, they then delay. They try to delay through lobbying efforts to see restrictions or you know, regulations come in. That is the tried and true method, and they use a type of that, but it's kind of more like what they do is they float an idea or they put it forward. So take something like Google Glass, right? Google Glass came out like 2015, and you know, there was all this uproar about, hey, that little camera on those glasses is always recording, and the microphone is always recording. How dare you? You don't have the right to record me. You know, like, you know, just random people on the street. Like, you that's a privacy violation for you to be able to just kind of do that and just be constantly recording. And so like Google kind of walked away from it from a time, but then what they do is they then come back to it later and try to make it as friendly as possible. And that's the way they've kind of pitched the kind of whole digital assistance. Because like you look at the ads for the digital assistants, and it's always like, oh, you live a hectic, busy life. Wouldn't you love to come home to Google Alexa? You know, who knows you better than you? You know, and they almost say it like in that really dystopian, scientific, like Black Mirror voice of, we know you better than you do. like, isn't that a very scary concept? That this like amorphous corporation that just has so much power across the globe knows you better than you do and is going to leverage that to, you know, make obscene amounts of money, you know, through various means of, you know, doing that through either advertising or just selling the information off, like I've said so many times before. And it's utterly scary because they try and make it as ubiquitous as possible, as friendly as possible, and they also what they manage to do is they talk about the inevitability of it. They're like, oh, this is just inevitable that, like, you know, home assistants are going to be in every house. Like, digital home assistants are going to be in every house. It's just inevitable. It's just inevitable. This is the thing they always talk about. It's like, it's just inevitable. It's always going to happen. But if you know anything about life, nothing is fucking inevitable. It's only inevitable. Well, yeah, wouldn't you imagine? Like, isn't it a huge coincidence that the people that are saying it's inevitable also have the largest financial gain and financial incentive from it being inevitable? Yeah, no shit. Go figure, right? So they're all absolute monsters. Facebook, social media, like for a Facebook example, they found out like years ago that they could understand people's emotions and their thoughts and feelings when kind of posting. So they figured out that from Monday to Thursday is very like kind of building up, a very build-up mood. And then from Friday to Sunday, it's a more of a celebratory thing where you're celebrating the achievements of the week. Whereas the Monday to Thursday is all about building towards something good. And then the weekend is all about enjoyment. And they've figured out that, and you know, through modeling the data and stuff like that, they've managed to, be able to pick up on moods, and found that, they could, just by shifting, and this actually, sorry, goes to a different point, and another unethical side about it is the experimentation they do with their website. So Facebook has come out and said multiple times, well, that's come out a couple times and has gotten in trouble for it, but then has like snuck away being like, okay, I guess we don't tell anyone about that from net going forward. They experiment with your newsfeed. They were doing experiments when they were looking at teenagers, and they were putting slightly more positive language, they would find posts with slightly more positive language and show a certain group of, they were essentially doing a clinical trial, essentially, was we'll give one group this, more positive feed, and we'll give another group a negative feed, and see how that then relates to their own posting going forwards. And, without fail, the ones that will receive positive messaging through their news feeds, through the shift in the algorithm that they made for this small subset, they were posting more positively. And, on the other side, the ones that saw the negative feed, saw negative posting, far much more negative posting. And that's kind of what it gets down to, is it's about accumulating as much information about you as possible. It's about then employing that information to then deliver revenues, whether that be through selling it or whatever. But then the last part is probably the scariest part about all. It's about changing your actions. It's about, think about it, they made a change to someone's news feed, like their timeline or whatever, on social media. And then that had a tangible impact on that person's life, actually how they were kind of experiencing their life. And that's the incredibly terrifying thing, is these companies essentially operating with no oversight at all. It's essentially cowboy country. And privacy experts have been talking about this for a while, but I mean, who the hell reads a privacy policy, let alone, thinks about what the hell a privacy expert is talking about? Everyone's just would just be like, shut the fuck up. And I don't blame them. It's a bit dry, but once you actually start learning about this privacy stuff, it becomes incredibly interesting and incredibly, concerning, really, that we're just kind of sleepwalking into this thing, and the whole time they're just selling you on how, it's great. They just tell you the positives. Little do you know that there's a cost behind it. Now, I think there's value, if there's value to be made from this data, then you should probably be entitled to it, if not financial recourse or something, some sort of financial benefit for you, if this is going to be used. But the more better thing, I think, is that you should be able to decide how the data about you is used. You're buying a service. That doesn't mean they get to understand everything about you. That doesn't. And you might think, how bad is it really? It's they're if you look through the permissions, let's say on an app, right? So if they have access to your camera roll, guess what? They have access to all of your photos. All of your photos are then on some data warehouse. Who the fuck knows where? Same thing with your contacts. If you share your contacts with an app, guess what? It's all over there. It's all in some data warehouse somewhere. And you just be like, oh, but it's just on my phone, right? Nope. What else? They'll scrape your the Wi-Fi networks that you connect to. So the Wi-Fi networks that your phone remembers, it will scrap that. Another example is it will scrape your just your phone's unique serial ID. It will scrape that. And could you imagine if you had a phone's unique serial ID, you could then probably track other information, even if you didn't have their web history. You could probably find it somewhere else and then match it on the ID for the phone, and then probably get that. And then you go, if you give them the location data, guess what? They know where you are at all times, so they can figure out where you live. So where are you between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. on Monday to Friday usually? Probably you're home, probably in bed. So they know exactly where you live and work. And the whole point, in their defense of all of this, they go, oh, all of this information is, all the information we sell to third parties is anomalized. Now, I work in an organization called the New South Wales Department of Health. Now, we do record linkage. Now, what's that? It's about taking two data sets and bringing them together, and finding one person on one data set and getting the information from another data set, that relates to that person here, right? Now, there are all of these ethical and clinical and ethical hoops that need to go through before you are even allowed to go through data linkage, for the exact fucking reason of this is someone's personal information. Yeah, we should probably keep that. It should be probably private. And let me tell you, just to bring it back to the surveillance capitalism side, if you have someone's phone ID, you can then use that across different data sets that different data brokers have to get all sorts of information, their web history, whatever. You can get it all. And that's the kind of crazy part about it, is all of this is going on in the background and we don't really think about it. But then once you're forced to think about it, it gives you this really uneasy feeling like, holy shit, Big Brother really does exist. And and that's what I always find funny about these dystopian, like why everyone loves dystopian TV shows and movies. I'm just like, you're fucking living in one. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't know why you're so interested about those fictional ones that don't exist. You're living in a real one right now. If you just were willing to look for it, just to look at the truth of this shit, of the world that we find ourselves in. But next part. God, I'm really kind of rambling here, and I know it's pretty bad, but like I've got all these thoughts running in my head because I'm about 80% of the way through the book, and God, there's just so much, and it's just so fucked up. What's another thing? Oh, okay, fine. So you might argue, okay, well those are just the big tech companies, right? Like that hasn't got a problem for me. No, it's not a problem at all. Well, okay, here's something you might not know. So what shopping centers do is they'll have a little Bluetooth signal emitter that is just constantly sending out a Bluetooth signal. And what it does is the way Bluetooth works is like it will just ping off other Bluetooth enabled devices. So that signal will find any phone that's got their Bluetooth on. And because it's constantly sending that ping out, it can see where you are at any moment, because as it's sending out the ping, it's sending back its location of how far and where from and in what direction that Bluetooth device is, that Bluetooth enabled device is on, or where it's at. So they can track you where you are in the shopping center. And then from there, they can then use that to put a certain bit of advertising in you, like in front of your face, or when you're like, hey, let's say you're searching something up at the time and an ad pops up. And wouldn't you know it, it's for the store that you just walked by, or the store right in front of you. And guess what? They've got a special promotional deal, but you've only got 15 minutes to redeem it, or XYZ, whatever the fucking reason is. So it's not just your super big tech companies that are doing this. It's getting like everyone in the corporate world is starting, in the private corporate world is starting to like kind of nose up to it and goes, oh shit, there's all this information we can glean from, and then turn that into revenue streams and maximizing profit. I mean, yeah, it's at the expense of the privacy of every individual on the planet, but that's a small price to pay for us increasing our profit margins by 10%. So fuck you. And isn't that great? And the irony about it all is people like the Mark Zuckerbergs and the people that run Google and stuff like that. The executives would be the number one people where they're like, no, Google Maps has to block out my property because, well, it's a privacy concern. I don't want people coming near me. Yet you're running companies that literally scrape every bit of information. Shoddy editing, I know, but the camera died. I don't know why. I was like, I guess I'm going for too long. Even my camera's like, bro, can you quit it? You're just rambling at this point. God damn, isn't that embarrassing? Even my camera hates me. But oh well. So what I was talking about before was how, someone like Mark Zuckerberg or, the executives of Google or Bill Gates and stuff like that would be the first people to block out their properties on Google Maps. But, it just shows the rank hypocrisy of them, where they want to, scrape all your data. But, what the point I was going to make before the camera cut off was, and this is probably maybe the last point I'll make, because I have been going on for quite a while, and maybe I should have made this into a series, so it's probably going to sound all a little bit deranged. But I mean, that's how crazy I'm going reading this book, and I'm just like, devices, get it away from me! Actually, sorry, I should explain a personal story that was really unsettling recently. So I've got a Samsung TV, and it's got all the smart functionalities that I've talked about before. But I don't have them any of it enabled. I don't have it on. I don't have it enabled at all, because like, just I don't like any of that Internet of Things or smart. Like, why does my toaster need to talk to my fridge to yell at my TV? You know what I mean? Like, I fucking hate that shit. It's just like, oh wow, have your your phone turn on your coffee maker. It's like, fuck world are we living in, bro? Just walk the 2 fucking steps to fucking turn it on. Whatever. But I'm watching TV and I bring my heater out. Now I've got a Dyson heater. It's one of these bladeless heaters. But it's about 8 years old now. So it's pretty, and this just shows you how far back this really goes, is it's 8 years old, it's put in a hell of a job, but it's an old model, right? And then I turn it on with the remote that the heater has, because the heater has a remote. And I then get this little notification on my TV, and it's like, oh, we have detected a Dyson heater / air purifier. Would you like us to connect the, would you like to connect your heater to your TV? And I'm just like, no, what the fuck? Like, unprompted, I didn't click on anything, I didn't do anything, nothing was cabled up or anything. I literally just turned on my heater in my living room, and then my TV wanted to immediately grab the information from my Dyson heater, and it would then track when I turn my Dyson heater, when I turn it off, what temperature I set it to. Fuck me, they're such assholes. But as you can imagine, I had the option to say yes or no, and I picked no, because fuck that. But the final point I wanted to make, now that the personal story is over, and this is something the book kind of talks about, is the unprecedented nature of all this. There has been no name or understanding or comprehension around this until it has now existed. So what does that mean? Let's use an example. Take automobiles. When automobiles and cars were first made, there was no name for what these things. People had no idea, they had no reference for these things, for what an automobile was. So what became a common term to use was that it's a horseless carriage. It's a horseless carriage, because people understood what a carriage is, and it's drawn, by the horses. So they could, in their mind, picture what a carriage looks like, and then all they had to do was take off the horses part of it, and they go, oh, okay, a carriage that goes by itself. Oh, go figure. That's crazy. What a world we live in. Science, am I right? And that's what people need to understand about this. This is not totalitarianism. This is what the author kind of talks about, is this can be easily misconstrued as, George Orwell's 1984 with Big Brother and stuff like that. No, this is not that. 1984 is about totalitarianism, and totalitarianism is about controlling a person's mind, heart, and soul to a total degree. There is no alternative. To take Nazism as an example of totalitarianism, it's just like there is nothing but the party. There is nothing but the party, which is the Nazi party, and anything that is outside of that is bad, and anything deemed bad by the party is also bad. But the things deemed good are things to strive for, and that's part of the totalitarianism. It's a very horse carrot and stick kind of approach, and to a ridiculous degree. And if you do not fall within those slats, or if you're not willing to conform to it, then you die. Then essentially it's torture and death for you. And if you need evidence of that, go through the 20th century. And Stalinism and what happened in the USSR, exact same thing. But for them it was the state. It was the communist state, which was the ultimate power, while the Nazis, it was the Nazi party. The party was above the state, and you were part of the movement. The movement. That's the thing. Now, where surveillance capitalism differs is they aren't necessarily trying to get you to conform to some sort of worldview or way of doing things. They're not trying to own your mind and soul and heart. They just want to know everything about it. Because if they know everything about it, they can then make prediction algorithms and prediction products, which they can on-sell or just sell the information directly to data brokers. And so that is why it is very important to avoid the word totalitarianism and its kind of comparisons, because it is about the world and violence. That's what that is about. It forces people to conform via violence, while what surveillance capitalism does is it forces you to conform through ubiquity. It wants everything to have a sensor in it. And to give another example of this, there is a guy called Levi Strauss who has a company who has built interactive denim, or called smart denim, which can pick up your movements. So now they're not just tracking you on your little wristwatch, on your little wearable. You're actually wearing in your pants, in these denim, sensors that pick up on your movements, your geolocation, all sorts of crazy shit. And they're looking to expand that into other fabrics. They literally want to, and when they're talking about this technology, they say the quiet part out loud. They genuinely say, oh yeah, we want to get to the point where, we can have sensors in your clothing with, a twitch of the hand can be picked up, and, a wrist motion, or, whatever. They can pick it all up and then catalog that, and then put that into, that is another of that person's moments live, cataloged and indexed to be pumped into our data. Prediction algorithms. And it's absolutely terrifying. And I guess to leave you on a note, their end goal is to do this. Have you ever heard of the Skinner box? So, if you haven't, B.F. Skinner was a behavioral kind of psychologist, or whatever the fuck you want to call him, behavioral theorist, or pretty much he's all about behavior. And he did all these psychological experiments with rats and mice and all this other crap, where you put them in a box, and if they press the button at the right time, they get a reward, and if they don't, they get a shock. It's it's the basic conditioning. It's called operant conditioning, which just essentially means action conditioning you to do an action. You might have, so if you've done a first year psychology course, you've probably read about the B.F. Skinner and B.F. Skinner box, but that's probably as far as you've really gone. You've gone to the basic surface level of his behavioral, psychology and his thing. But he's a real fucking loose unit. So he writes a book later on called Beyond Freedom and Dignity. Yeah. What a fucking title. Imagine a society where you got beyond freedom and your dignity. Shit. And that's what this guy's all about. So his worldview, and this is kind of the origin, the original seed of surveillance capitalism, is that there is no free will. There is no freedom of thought, of expression, of action. Instead, what it is ignorance. That essentially we can explain all behaviors and all outcomes if we just had more information. And that's what he tried to, and that's what he's showing in that Skinner box, that experiment. But now, and in that book, Beyond Freedom and Dignity, he's essentially talking about a society that is controlled, where every single person is that rat in that box, and they will get, and if they do the right thing according to the conditions, they will get the treat, and they will do the right thing, because we now know the circumstances and the information we need to force someone, to encourage someone to do what they're told, or do the thing that we want them to do, take the action that we deem to be good, as opposed to not good. And then the only reason why they did the not good thing was because we haven't gathered enough information to then be able to properly put them on the right path. And oh man, it is fucked up. And it's only up until really now in the 21st century that there's been the computational power and the connectivity to be able to get all of that information to go down the route that this B.F. Skinner guy was such a hardcore. He called himself a radical behavioralist. Yeah. Please read the book. Please recommend it to anyone that you know. It is a big boy. I mean, Mother's Day is coming up soon, so, buy it for your mum. I know she'll open the packaging and just be like, oh, the age of surveillance capitalism. How'd you know? And then she'll just be like, I'm going to put that in the shit pile. Yeah. Please do buy it. Please read the book. It's eye-opening. It's some real eye-opening stuff. And it is a bit of a long read, but it is, every page is worth reading, because I haven't even scratched the surface. I've been going on for like, I swear to God, 30 to 40 minutes, but I haven't even scratched the surface of it all. And yeah, like I said, as a bit of an exercise, go read the privacy policy of one of your apps or one of your devices or whatever, and just actually realize how fucked it is. Look at the data sharing clauses of your privacy policy on whatever app or whatever thing you have, and it will be an utterly, paranoia-inducing, experience. But hey, guess what? They'll be tracking it, so then they can advertise, fucking antidepressants or some shit for you. Whatever. Well. Look, that's the episode for this week. I know it's a bit of a long one. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do like and subscribe, and give suggestions or even book suggestions. God, I'm always looking for good books because I love reading it. So if you've read something good, please tell me about it. But besides that, stay cool.